I want to thank everybody for coming to this summer installment of the Delgado reading series. Today we have Taylor Johnson, who is from DC. They're the author of Inheritance, put out by Alice James Books in 2020, and their work appears in the Paris Review, the Baffler, Scalawag, and elsewhere. Johnson is a Cave Canem graduate fellow and a recipient of the 2017 Larry Neal Writers Award from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. They live in New Orleans where they listen. I'll pop their website in the bio so you can check it out. Poets and Writers sponsored this event, and I'll turn it over to you, Taylor.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sean. I'm just going to read about 10 poems and then I'll get out your way. Thank you for being here and listening. Hope you all can hear me well. Can you hear me, Sean? Okay, cool. Again, this is all these poems are from Inheritance, which Sean mentioned. And if you're in New Orleans, it's at Blue Cypress for sure. They have like 2 or 3 copies. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll just read these poems now. Um, it's still strange to read poems on the internet, and I'll just say that out front. Since I quit that internet service, I'm thinking more about the transitive properties in books, the words, the palimpsest of images accruing in my brain, but more immediately, the book in my hand, the cover worn at one end from sweat and gripping it when it comes close. Close, as in when I sit up, let one deep exhale when I came to the lines of all fearless happiness from which reaches my life I sing and find it underlined by a beloved stranger. It's like turning the record over, knowing you're hearing what I'm hearing, easing up on the edge of the chair. It's like we're holding hands now at the edge of a white silence from which we are to make a music of our being here, of being moved, wherein our music complements and holds close each other's sound in the wet room of the tree I met you in. Nothing is said about the water or the fearless trees angled toward and against the light that did fall on me, made much of me, light that sings through me, so I'm singing. Ecclesiastes, how to testify in the marketplace for my voice was everything was meaningless, knee deep in the mud with my tongue out, monsoon, mason jar, morning glory, must I carry even the idiolect of gravel, glossolalia and stupor of all things moving and unmoving. I fall in and I fall back out. Oh, exaltation. The Virginia pine grows straight up to deeper blue, and most taproots I'll never see. I was waiting for you to turn around, pretending none of this baffles me, not taking it personally. Club 2718. Because I don't have the juice or enough gold anything to enter. A room that occasionally exists inside of me is the poorly lit dance floor of Club 2718. Thirst is a way of knowing, not knowing. I was on a gin-fueled hunt for big asses and music I could cry to. A woman almost twice my age asks where I've been, and she shuts the door. Like any American, what haunts me is my addiction to private property, not time or blackness. I want to love no one in particular the way I say I love my woman when she's in the doorway and mad at me. There were days I believed my grandfather owned my grandmother, kept her overfed and out of the sun in the back room. Occasionally, a room exists inside of me where Johnny Hartman and John Coltrane's One and Only Love plays on repeat. On repeat, too, is a video of my grandfather dancing a limber leg shuffle and singing across the wall to my grandmother. To love like him is to be a student of regret. To abide by regret is to watch grief turn to ecstasy. I wept in the winter when I left my woman. I wept in the heat when she came back. My idea of abstraction is white lightning, which is something that Jack Whitten said, the painter and sculptor and brilliant artist. Halfway between Gunyan and Ophelia, imminent splendor. It doesn't matter what I don't know. Clouds creating a blue fissure in the sky, whose grammar, whose sadness hurries forth. I want to speak to order, soybeans, corn, wheat rose brown to torpor, mercy, protozoan, water shorn, hotly I listen in the pines for my green name, whoever can stop reasoning, stop. Is it too much to ask to be remade? I who've just begun. Adagio of light, copper-hued diadem hanging on twilight's hem, Virginia sun, I'm yet released from the sharp language of being. Make me another by morning, lest I stay in this vestibule wholly unmade. Whereas I come into the into to talk with my shadow. From you I've not hid my face. For in the morning I make and am made by you, beautiful projection, boy in the mirror, boy in my mind. I separate my flesh from my flesh to become more like you, to drown in your holdings. O young lord of my desire, you are the light I ride toward, I run from. I eat less and avoid being hailed, anonymous interstitial prince of my undoing, redeemer of my yes. I want to grow into you and then abandon your imprecise naming. I am bequeathed violence, your inheritance, and your rough glamour. I'm made to tarry here with you, thus illumined by your tenuous light. I forget about money watching the clouds over 8th and Ingraham. The clouds, a rhubarb colored ship in the sky. To my right, it all grays out. The bats emerging now from the chimneys. The bats listening for the cicadas' echo. Echo is a way to create space, is a metaphor for time. Time for the cop to move along. I think watching the cop watch me from my porch. Fuck 12. The robin on the wire vine, the wire eye competing with the bats for cicadas. The robin competing reds with the sky. The sky, a money for the cicadas, a way to make space, time, the cicadas sounding out the future through repetition. A friend says to spend nothing is to keep flexibility in your hands, to keep your youth. Money, the sound of decay. Money, the repetition of waste. Black existential exegesis. This engine and cog business is wigged out. I want nothing we're owed from the ship gig, thence the land whereon modern sound weaned off our cowrie and cached aged conjure. Land whereon our woe is chic and wanted. Shout out to every nigga cajoled into winging it in a crowd, crowing about being the hewer and the hewer's subject. Oh, my aching chore choir due upon our ochre echo throughout this land, this cadence gag, our ego greeted upon and caged. Grace is our odd crowd which encores green and geodes. Shout out to every nigga dodging age by ignoring human genre fiction gore. Ergo, we're nowhere reneging on being owned and renewed, weighing nothing like race. Shout out to every nigga eroding off the edge of something else, gossamering in the air. I'll just read three more, if that's okay. This poem is called Go-Go Ode. Go-Go music is a Black indigenous technology uh, from DC. Go-Go Ode. Oh, capacious room, give me your tongues. I'm done with being self-possessed. Take hold, turn the river in me. I'm freed up to be anybody else. My molecules twinned with the sound. Oh, erotic hours pass me not. Keep me in the pocket. Oh, percussive descent. Devotion is anything you say go awry. In this early hour, keep me recursive. The impulse is to lose my feet. I'm yet overcome. You seismic drop, you sovereign fade. Oh, black chaos, I'm in study at your center. Turn me out. A kind of wildness descends, and across the expanse, the attendant wind drones its one fecund song. When I'm so tender in the thick of rot, I let all the morning wet spread a plague across this threadbare vessel that holds in what hums, what rushes beneath. Give as the ground gives. Make of me your groveling tongue, your dust, your possessed, possessing. Never let up. I'll read one more. On my way to you. Every day is an invitation into intimacy. I decide, leaving my house, that I would cross it, given the distance, being money myself, and having none in the form of new shoes and all these holes in my jacket. I inherited this privacy, given what it's like to be an instrument, given each plant singing in its season, given the trees between. How can I tell you, given that you abide, I zeroed out in the field, given the no place of the soul, given the soul ringing in the forest hollows, given to ringing, being money myself given away, given the language this image system produces, given that distance, given how maroon the morning war sky I wake up in, owning nothing, being money myself, given that the block is mine, saith the red-eyed god, slouched over, standing up in exquisite coats, given trouble and home in the city that slipped out one night, given uptown, Trinidad, KDY, wolves in Rock Creek, given the corn syrup spilling out the corner store, given the technicolor whole of the corner store, given 7th in Florida, that chromophonic praise break at the intersection, given that happenstance touch, given the distance of money, I'm from nowhere where I'm from, being not moneyed myself and given to language, given and being let go, that distance, that I could cross it, given that you can hear me. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. We got a bunch of Delgado students in the house tonight. If you wouldn't mind taking a little Q&A from them cats. So if you're out there, please feel free to turn your mic, ask a question, or pop a question in the chat. Either way is perfectly fine.
Hi, Taylor.
Hello.
Hey, my name is Robin. I'm an instructor at Delgado, and some of my students are here. And I was thinking so much about things we've been chatting about in class, listening to your poetry, which was dope as shit. So yeah. I'm not really sure how to ask this question. I have kind of like 7 kind of floating around, so I'll talk until it turns into a question. But I was thinking about the deliberate choice of words. Like, I was thinking about 2 big things. I was thinking about your vocabulary, and I was wondering, like, in terms of maybe like in terms of a craft question, how you prefer to move your word choices. Like, I'm wondering if you write one version first and then move towards the appropriate words. That's kind of like question number 1. And question number 2, you, with the word choices being so sonically interesting, like I was hearing like palimpsests and like these, like I love these type of chunky words, but you sometimes that kind of lyrical style can get us away from the imagery. And I thought what was interesting about your work is like there's a balance of that sort of sound element along with imagery. So it was, I guess my question is like, what's your craft feeling about balancing those two elements of writing? So I had 2 questions, and then
Yeah.
hopefully my students are thinking about other things.
Thank you for those questions, Robin. I'll speak to vocabulary first, which is, I mean, I think that everyone has their own language, you know what I mean? Like everyone is born with a certain set of like an innateness to language. And some can, that innateness can go away through education, through socialization, learning. But I feel like I've been lucky to like retain my curiosity, my interests, and my sometimes abhorrence of language, and that is what can lead to like words that might not feel conversational or colloquial, being used in this sense, but that in the poem they do feel colloquial and conversational, if that makes sense. Also because like this book, I mean, it's my first book, so you know what first books are for people who write anything. It's kind of like I'm practicing my voice, you know what I mean? I'm practicing how I say the things I need to say, how I get to the, the heart of an image, how I can exhaust an image. And similar in sound, how I can make someone come along with me. A lot of how I think about this book is like you're walking with me. You're walking with me from, let's say, the top of 14th Street in DC all the way down. You're walking with me from the top of Georgia Avenue all the way down. And throughout that walk, I'm going to tell you about different things. You're going to see people talk to me. I'm going to talk to certain people. Someone's going to talk to you. But if you can stick with me, you know what I mean? The sound is all over the place, but it's also trying to hint at some kind of oneness, some kind of like, oneness is, I guess, the word I want to use.
Are you saying it's all like kind of like cohesive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
I mean,
it all fits together in your mind. Like
yeah.
that's your home. That's where you from. That's your city.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot of chaos, but to
Yeah.
me, it's just the norm.
Exactly. And it's just the noise, and it's like I'm trying to move through the chaos and like pull you the one through line throughout all the chaos, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to get you to hear what I hear in the midst of all of that is like outside of myself, you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's your spiritual recognition. You're trying to get somebody to tune into where your spirit is and where your heart is of where you from.
Tamika, you got me. You got me. That's it.
I can relate to that. That's how I feel about New Orleans. That's why I say that.
Right. That's right. Yeah. No, I feel you. I feel you. Thank you for seeing me and hearing me. Yeah. I appreciate that so much.
I feel like it follows up on what we were just talking about in class, just the idea of subjective, objective. And it feels like, Taylor, you're hitting on, you have this subjective experience, but your desire of pulling people in is like, we know that ultimately that's an impossible thing to do. You can't completely pull someone into your eyeballs, but we enjoy the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah. And if you're willing to give up your position as yourself, you can lean in even more. You know what I mean? Like if you're willing to let go of your, what is Wallace Stevens says, the inexactnesses of your particular language, and seeing you can like let go into something that is someone else's, you know what I mean? Yeah.
What kind of things would you tell these students in terms of finding poetry? We looked at prose and talked a little bit about poetry within the prose. we had a little discussion about that. Do you think that there's always poetry to be found?
Yeah, I mean, especially right now. I mean, there's so many amazing contemporary poets, but there are also so many dead, amazing poets. Some of my favorite poets are dead, but they're not really dead because I still read their book and I read them aloud. You know what I mean? So their words live. But I always think that it's important to like know what you like first. You know what I mean? Like read things that really speak to you. For example, I really like Christopher Gilbert, the poet Christopher Gilbert. I love his work. I like Jim Jordan, you know what I mean? They speak to me. Um, I like Gertrude Stein, you know what I mean? And sometimes it means going to people who you can connect with, you know what I mean? Like the first poets I heard were poets in DC, the people who I was around in my community and in the community of poets, you know? So sometimes it's like hearing those things to learn what it is you like and don't like, you know what I mean? Yeah. But there's poetry in everything, honestly. I remember when I was like probably 20 or something like that, I was into like theory and various kinds of like phenomenology, you know what I mean? And like Sarah Ahmed and Derrida and like all these people and Fanon, who's a poet, and that language spoke to me as like, of course, theory, but also as poetry. You know what I mean? There was something in the emotional resonance of those texts, even in their, you know, supposed headiness, there's still poetry in those things. So I think that anything, you know, a journal article, a newspaper article, something you read online, somebody's, you know, social media, you know what I mean? All those things have the possibility to move, you know what I mean? That's what words can do. Now, are they poems? I wouldn't say that for everything at all, but I think that the idea that language can be elevated to its um, you know, sensual and precise level is possible for all language that we take in. I don't know if that makes any sense. But
That makes so much sense. One of my students has remarked, you reminded me of the poem No Man is an Island by John Donne. You married a sense of, and then I lost the note. Jessica, why don't you unmute?
Hi. um, did that work?
Yeah.
Okay. That was really beautiful. Thank you. Um, I it just made me feel like I was very much into existentialist kind of theory in my like teenage years, but you like somehow managed to have a sense of that with also just connection, you know, because existentialism, like the poem, like there's like this kind of sense of like each, you know, we're all on our own, like no one can ever see through your eyes, like you are, you know, you're born and will die alone. And also like there are so many ways in which we are all the same and can understand each other and can connect. And I just thought you really like balanced those two sides of the same proverbial coin really beautifully.
thank you. Yeah. And John Donne was like the first poet I loved and connected with. I was 15 and I read one of those holy signs. What's the number where he says, "Batter my heart, three-person God"? What's that? Do you know that one? Oh yeah, the holy sonnets are a trip. They're a trip. Yeah, I really dig him. Yeah.
Taylor, you're
What
so well. Go ahead, Jessica. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what are some of your other favorite poets or first inspiration? To me, like that age, 14, 15 is kind of like personally, it, you know, it was like for a period of time with like books and music, you just kind of read or listen to what's around, like what's, you know, what your parents have on the radio in the car. And then at a certain point, for me, it was like between 12 and 14 that you kind of start to develop your own tastes and proclivities. um I just wonder what some of yours were.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like John Donne a lot, who I was introduced to probably when I was 14 or 15, similar to Gwendolyn Brooks. That was actually Gwendolyn Brooks' Kitchenette Building. It was the first poem I memorized. And then I read a bunch of her stuff. Lucille Clifton, similar age, 15, 16 probably. And then Baraka, I actually got to meet Amir Baraka when I was like 16 or 17, but I was introduced to his work when I was 15 through a summer program I took, where I was engaged in learning about poetry, kind of from a Pan-African sensibility. And we read the anthology. Me and my cohort read this anthology called Black Fire, edited by Haki Matabuti and someone else who I'm forgetting. But in that, Amir Baraka is very prominent, and yeah, so I really dig him. Um, Especially some of the poems in the Dead Lecturer, like An Agony As Now, which is really beautiful, and kind of speaks to his own trying to love himself. Yeah, and then I also, outside of poetry, I mean, I really liked the writer Jeanette Winterson. I remember reading Written on the Body when I was like 16 or 15, and feeling so connected to that book. Also around that time, I think 14, I read Invisible Man and loved that dive into, this idea of selfhood and making yourself up. Yeah, I've read a lot forever, so I kind of go on, but those I guess are some of the earlier ones. Yeah.
I'd love if I was trying to write down as you were, talking about, I'd love if you could like share just a couple of your favorite or people you were inspired by or that you first loved, like whether it be writers or poets. So I have to add, you have a really, really interesting and like beautiful delivery. Like it's like velvet and silk. It's like very, very just chill. And I'm inspired by different, like the way that different authors and poets deliver their material. Like obviously I think most people saw Amanda Gorman at the inauguration, and she was like, I was kind of just watching in the background as the inauguration was happening. And when she came, I had never heard of her before. And when she started speaking, I literally, like, my jaw dropped and all of my attention was directed 100% at the television. I don't know that this is a question necessarily, but did you watch, or did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I don't own a television, so I didn't get to see it, but yeah, I think everyone delivers their thing however it lands in their body, you know what I mean? So how I read it right now is different than maybe how I read it tomorrow, because I feel a different way about it, or I approach the words differently. But I do take it as like something that's alive, you know what I mean? Like it's art, you know what I mean? So there's like an inherent kinetic sense. And then also for me, like most of these poems were written walking, you know what I mean? Composing in my head while walking. So they have movement.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So tell me if I'm picking up on how you feel, because I feel like I can relate to you a lot in different ways. And what I feel and what I get the feel for is that you don't really want to be put in a box. You don't want to kind of be put into a genre. Like, your writing is your freedom, because you seem like you kind of like a reserved and a quiet person. Mm-hmm. So this is your way of kind of like dealing with life is through your poetry, mm-hmm. dealing with your feelings, emotions, etc. So that it's almost exactly like saying it is what it is, because if I say it like that, it's exactly how I mean it, because that's how I felt it at that point in that moment. So it's no way you can define or tell or kind of tell. I think what they don't get is your electricity, by you being different and you being eccentric and you thinking and you feeling different. It's not it's not a way to put that in a box or
Right.
a way to say that it's a particular construct. No, this is exactly how I said it. This is
Mhm.
exactly how I felt,
That's
and this
right.
is how I wanted to be observed.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly it. You know what I mean? Like there's so much that's like I don't really care for the idea of aboutness. You know what I mean? Like the poems aren't about anything. They enact feelings. You know what I mean? They enact some kind of connection. They don't enact being a thesis about something. You know what I mean? So Tamika, when you're saying all those things, I agree with you so much because I think oftentimes it's very easy for people who make art to be put in a place where it's like you have to say the definitive sentence about this thing when we know every day we wake up new people. So it's kind of silly, you know? Yeah, I
But
appreciate
it's true because if you look at, if I might go outside and see the same flowers every day, and today those flowers might be beautiful to me, but
Right.
tomorrow when I come home, I'm so sick of looking at those flowers. You know,
Yeah.
like it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
That's right. Isn't it the poet Lorca? Didn't he write about green a lot? Just the color green, you know what I mean? Like opening it up because it is different every day. It's different because you're different, you know what I mean? The quality of light is different. It's all, yeah. So,
I get it. I get it.
You got me thinking
Get
about
right
something
here.
else that applies to like students and the position that students are in is that you are clearly a very creative soul, but you also have this intellectualism that is really apparent. I mean, you've got a very deep like source, like your all your references flow so naturally, and you said you're interested in theory. And I always come to this point in teaching a 101 class, like where we go, okay, so we did the creative essay, now we have to learn the academic essay. But I feel like you can bring the creative part into the what we would call academic work. And I'm curious if you've thought about that, like how do you bring a poetic sensibility when you're dealing with the things that feel like the drier academic stuff? Does that make sense as a question?
It does. I don't really deal with anything academic. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the highest degree I have is a high school diploma. I don't have a college degree. So whatever I write, it's for me, you know? Like I'm not looking for anyone to look at it or
That
approve it. Yeah,
and that's interesting because you're talking about reading, like if you're reading Derrida,
Mhm.
that's some tough stuff.
Yeah,
And someone in a student position sometimes they can sometimes feel like, oh, I don't know how to deal with all this like tough language.
yeah.
And yet you clearly have been fearless in like being, I guess, an autodidact. And so does that mean you have any advice in terms of how a student can kind of reach into a difficult text, if
Yeah.
especially when they feel like maybe they're an outsider?
I mean, I'm gonna be real with you. I think that like it's really hard to teach people how to read in a uniform sense, you know? Like I was really lucky that my early education was horizontal, you know? There was no like you have to read something in this way. I was really lucky in that sense, but that's not everybody's opportunity. Um, so eh, a lot of people, most people approach anything that is written outside of themselves with a little bit of fear, you know what I mean? Because they think they're not gonna get it right. But the truth is, it's no right. It just isn't. You know what I mean? Like these are just words that somebody else had, you know, and you are free to do with them, you know, what you want ultimately. Um, and I think in the context of a school, you know, like it's like it must be hard to facilitate a space where you have to like deal with a lot of people's different versions of reading and listening, you know. But I think that I mean I'm not an educator. I'm not a sociologist in any kind of the sense of the word, but I feel like that
You
that
just experience. You got a
Yeah.
different type of experience from life. You have a different walk of life.
Mhm.
How many people you know, in today's world, today's society, who doesn't on the TV?
Yeah,
So you know, you vibrate different.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's just it. That's just it. And I know that it's like most people who are writers, they try to get jobs in academic context, which is cool, you know what I mean? You make some money, all that, but I don't know. For me, I feel like um those kind of settings, I mean, I would be so free in that space, you know what I mean? Like it really wouldn't be about getting to any one thing. I used to teach high school in DC, just like art classes at different high schools. And my only goal was like, by the time we end the semester, we end the year, everyone is gonna love each other a little bit in this room. You know what I mean? We're in here as 15 strangers, 20 strangers, but we're gonna go away like loving each other a little bit or a lot of bit. But if we get a little bit, that's all. You know what I mean? Because the rest is just like it's just production. You know what I mean? But interpersonally, how can we be as strangers together who like can share a room once or twice a week? Yeah. I feel like I'm just rambling and saying crazy things, but thanks for listening, y'all. Really appreciate it. And if you don't have my book, I mean, I really would appreciate it if you did get it. I'm in New Orleans. I live there right now. I'm in DC right now, but I live in New Orleans. Yeah. So, and you know, if you want to ever meet up about poetry or like, you know, whatever happened at Delgado, if there's some stuff you guys are putting on, I would love to come listen or just be with you, you know.
I'm hoping to do a spoken word event maybe next year. So I'm going to talk to you about that. Can you remind us again where to get your book?
Yeah, you can get it anywhere books are sold. It's everywhere. It's everywhere you find a book.
I'll rephrase that. Where do you get the best cut? I want you
Yeah,
to make money.
yeah, you can get it at the Alice James website. I'll put the link here. Just give me one
Thank
second
you.
to find it. Yeah. But you know, the other important thing is you have an institutional library at Delgado. Um, so you can request it there. That helps out a lot too. Let me make sure I'm copying this right. Okay. Cool, yeah, and you can get it straight from right there. And on that in that link you can see it's like things other people have said about it, but the link to buy the book is also right there. And like I said, you know, if you're, you know, in New Orleans, you can go to Blue Cypress Books and request it there. They definitely have at least one copy. I think they've sold a few, but they might still have one left. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank everybody for coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a beautiful night of poetry and conversation. Hopefully we'll see you in person in the fall, Taylor, maybe at Delgado.
Yep, that'd be wonderful. Just you have my email address, and you know, if any of y'all are, you know, wanting to reach out, you can. There's Sean had put my website there, so you can just click over to there and email me that way if you want to. Thanks, y'all.
Peace.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Have a good afternoon or a good
Thank you
evening
too.
now.
Have a good evening.